Hello, happy Wednesday. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it was St. Patrick's Day today. That's true?
No, you did not. You didn't
I
know?
didn't. I didn't know. No.
You didn't have to put temporary tattoos on your child's face today?
I didn't. I
Wow.
should have.
Two
Wow, I
different
feel like a bad
mornings.
parent. Yeah. I
I'm
think
also
I saw something about it on Facebook, but I didn't believe it. I was like, there's
wow.
no way.
Well, this is episode 17 on the 17th of March, which is also St. Patrick's Day. For those of you listening that didn't put temporary tattoos on your child's face, welcome.
And that seems like very lucky. St. Patrick's Day, 17th on the
Yeah, it feels
17th.
good, right? I
Yeah.
have Wi-Fi, we're above ground, life's good.
Your laptop's is fixed. We're coming
Yes,
at you
thank you
guys a
for
little
CompuSafe.
late, but yeah.
Yes. They put a little sticker on your computer too, which says service by. I think Lynn and Joe should do that for their cars. A
I'll
sticker.
let them know. I agree. Or they listen. Maybe they'll take that up.
Good. Dig.
Maybe they'll put it on like the window of people's cars. You
Yes,
can't take you
yes.
can't take it off. It's free
Exactly.
advertising.
They decal like whole vehicles going out.
We should be running their marketing department, honestly.
Seriously. All right. I like where we're going with this. How's your day?
I'm a little bit tired. I did not sleep well last night. When you just like are laying there for hours and hours and you just can't sleep because
Yes.
no reason, you just can't sleep.
Or like you go like it's just like it's a skim sleep. Like you never get deep. You're yes, I have those sleep. Then you feel like yeah, exhausted the next day. I sometimes have those when the dogs are really active too.
Yeah, I was
Because
just gonna say, and of course today my dogs decided they wanted to wake up at the crack of dawn.
yeah, they're like, good morning, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, they wanted those tattoos on their face, but I just
Yeah,
wasn't
seriously.
prepared.
We have temporary tattoo mustaches that are like green, and I was thinking of putting one on to surprise Travis later. See how that goes.
Do it. I encourage it.
Grant was fully on board for me to do it this morning, so if I do it, I gotta send him a picture.
I would. All right, episode 17. What are we talking about?
We are talking about tenant rights. And I'm super
Yes.
excited because this is something that I don't know like anything about, I guess. And I've been a tenant in my parents' home. No, I'm just kidding. But I have been like a tenant renting when we went to school in Hamilton. And because I wasn't there full time, there were some issues, but I don't think I was affected enough by them to have to do anything about it, which isn't a good thing, but it's an on like that's the answer I have. So I'm super excited for you to share your knowledge and your expertise in this area, and for those listening, it might be able to help. Right.
I just hit my mic on accident.
Oh, I didn't even hear you. Okay. So for those listening, it might help you out, or just give you some support in areas that you, or if you're a real estate, a, oh my gosh, a landlord. That's the word.
Yes. A
Yes.
real
So
estate landlord.
real estate landlord, a slumlord, whatever.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because I think most people, especially around us who, go to school, a lot of people rent, at least during school. And in this, housing market, a
Yes.
lot of people are being forced to rent because prices are crazy. But there isn't a lot of like resources. And like in high school, we never learned about like what it is to rent, what your rights are, what you should be looking for, what you should be looking out for. And I think I have a lot of fun and interesting stories that I'm excited to share about because I've rented since I came to Guelph
Since you
for university. Yeah, since I left Norwich. And I have had a very interesting collection of experiences with my renting. So I'm excited to get to that, but we're going to get to that near the end. I want to talk a little bit about tenant rights, like you said. So what things, we should look out for and what our rights are and what we can do and what we can't do. And then I want to talk a little bit about landlord rights because I think being a landlord is actually a really great way to make money and a really easy way to make money. So I want to talk about that a little bit, kind of encourage those who maybe have thought about it to think about
Yes.
it a little harder.
All right.
So
Start us off.
let's dive in. So when I first started renting, I was renting with my friends in second year. So, I just got a group of my friends from first year and we just went and looked at houses. We didn't really know what we were looking at. We didn't really know what questions to
Really look like
ask.
a tour of a bunch of kids, and they're like, it's just like it's their. I feel like a first taste of like adulting, and you're just kind of like stumbling around in the like the property manager is like, yeah, and you're like, yeah, there's 7 of us, there's 7 bedrooms, let's do it.
Exactly. 10 out of 10, that was my experience. Literally, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just like, every house we went to, we were like, oh, this is perfect. Let's get it.
Yeah.
Didn't ask any questions, didn't do anything. So luckily enough, we did wind up in I'll say decent house with a decent landlord. I don't want to talk bad about anyone. There was a couple of issues, but nothing too bad. But I remember the day we signed the lease, I didn't really read the lease. I was just like, yep, this is what you do. You go, you put your signature there, you
Where to
give them
sign.
the money, and that is
You have to get
how
a
you
co-signer.
rent. No, nope.
No. Okay.
Um, Probably if I was a landlord, I would have university students have a cosigner or at least some sort of conversation with some parents or something like that. I've never ran into that I've rented 3 different places technically when I was in university, and I never ran into anything. My parents never had to be involved or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I think if you're a landlord renting to a group of 18, 19-year-olds, I would
Oh yeah, it makes sense.
maybe do a little more research. But yeah, so leases are they've gotten a lot easier recently. I remember the lease that I first signed was just definitely the landlord had handwritten or not handwritten it, but typed it out herself. It didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what my obligations were. I didn't understand what I was getting, but the rent was cheap and the house was standing. So I
You're
was
like,
like, this
cool.
is perfect.
Roof over my head, a toilet that flushes.
Now, these days, there is a standard lease that landlords are obligated to
Obligated.
use, which is perfect. I have looked over that lease, and it's focuses on being clear for both the tenant and the landlord,
Yeah.
because there's definitely been a lot of issues in the past where people it's just a miscommunication. It's not understanding, but it costs
Right.
people money.
Well, yeah, it's over something as simple as like cutting the grass. Is it yours or is it mine? And if it's not done because I thought it was you and you thought it was me, then you get like the tickets from the hall and stuff, right? Not the hall, the city, the
The
town
principal's
hall.
office.
Yeah, yeah. You get sent to the principal office and have to pay money.
Exactly. But anyways, before you sign a lease, I want to encourage everyone, especially young people, to for sure read the lease because it does tell you exactly what you are expected to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that landlords are, what's the word? I don't want to say slimy, but there are definitely people out there who target young university students because they know that they're not going to read the lease and
Yeah,
they
you
know
just
they're
have
not going to.
yeah, you have to have your own interests, right? Your own path, I guess.
Exactly. And I didn't know that there was any resources out there beforehand. But if you are a university student and you do know a real estate agent or you do know a lawyer even or anyone who, even if you're just signing your first lease and it's just for like a year and you're a university student, it's not going to be a big thing. Get someone to look it over. Get your parents to look it over.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you're not being um, I don't want to say screwed over,
That's what
but
I
you
was
know what
gonna
I'm saying.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get a
For
copy of it
example,
too. Like,
yes,
yeah.
100%. For example, in Ontario, it is not legal for landlords to require some sort of security deposit or anything like that. They,
Interesting.
yeah.
So, what about like first and last month's rent?
So that is legal, but it can't be used as a security deposit. So they can't keep it if, you
Oh, like when
yeah.
you stay in a hotel and they're like you get your extra when you leave if the room's not destroyed. Oh,
Exactly. But they can definitely take last month's rent, but they can't take more than rent, 1 month's
okay.
rent. Or if it's a week by week lease, they can't take more than a week's rent. Um, that just protects the tenant. And then another thing with that is they can require a key deposit, but it
Oh, okay.
can't be more than the cost of a key.
Which
So
is what,
in
like
I don't
$5.
even know how much like
I
you can get a key copied at like Walmart for like
Right.
$5, $2. Like it
Right.
can't be like but I remember one of my roommates in first year, our landlord required us, I think it was a $200 key deposit, which obviously is not a real thing
Per person?
per person. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and she tried to, when we did eventually, I moved out before everyone else, but when everyone eventually moved out, the landlord tried to refuse to give her that key deposit back because the house was a mess when they left.
Oh, but that's not
which
what
is
the deposit's for.
that's not what the deposit's for. That's obviously not legal. But she tried to say that it was in the lease that the deposit that she could keep it for whatever reason she wanted, which wasn't legal. But
No.
anyways, it's just situations like that. It's not a big deal because she did end up getting her money back, but there are situations where you maybe couldn't get your money back if it was slightly different, or it's just like a hassle you don't want to have to deal with. And if we had
Yeah.
read that over in the beginning, it would have been a situation that we could have just avoided. And that landlord was not great anyways. She
No.
never showed up for repairs.
Yeah.
I remember one time our bath was overflowing, like the water wouldn't stop. We couldn't turn the bath off. It took her like 12 hours to come and take a look at it or like respond to our texts. We called her, we emailed her, but just stuff like that. So you want to make sure the landlord you're getting involved with is
Active
active.
management. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So going over the lease, do you have any questions about that? Did anything I say make?
No, I just think it's yeah, I think you're right. It's very easy for people to take advantage of those who like, yeah, you're excited, you're getting out of the house, or you're like kind of first step, and you're like, yeah, I'll just sign there. But it's like to take the time and be the weirdo that slows down and reads it because it'll benefit you in the long run.
Right. And I think that's super important too, what you said, because we've talked about like social pressures and like being
Yes.
the weirdo that says, no, I don't want to spend money or no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's 100% okay. And it's your life and it's your, for lack of a better word, it's your butt on the line.
Yeah.
So be that weirdo. It's okay.
Weirdo. It is
They
so.
might judge you in the moment, but 24 hours later, everyone's forgot about it. So who cares? And you're
Yeah.
protected.
Exactly.
Drink that water.
I don't
Okay. I then want to talk about rent and if there are situations like when my landlord didn't show up for 12 hours. That's funny.
I just
Okay.
okay. Who do you call?
I would
Ghostbusters.
just call 911 if no, I'm just kidding.
You're kidding.
No, I wouldn't do that. I've never called 911 for that.
That's good.
Anyways, holding back rent is something that I want to talk about because I've heard, a lot of people just say, well, if my landlord's not doing this or not, following
Oh, so
through
then
or
they
whatever.
don't pay their rent.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I've actually had, they weren't my roommates or on my lease, but like it was like a shared unit. And they tried to just hold back rent because the landlord wasn't being nice to them.
Is
But
that a thing that you can do?
no, that's what I'm getting at. You can't hold back rent for any reason. There is a couple, obviously everything's like a little bit gray. There's a couple situations where absolutely you can. But for the most part, if your landlord doesn't call you back, you can't not give them rent, which is
Oh.
kind of a way to protect landlords. And similarly, landlords can't just cut off your utilities if you don't respond to their text or something like that. Like it's not legal for there to be that little pettiness in there.
But then so say I didn't pay my rent, when can the landlord cut off my utilities?
If you're just not paying rent, it is so like basically never. They would have to file to evict you before they could.
I feel like that does get tough when you have a sticky tenant, and as the landlord, like, I feel like it is a lot of work to get them out, and it's not it's not a pressing issue. There's child abductions, there's other things going on that the law has to take care of. So your tenant that hasn't paid rent but is still living there, it's kind of like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it.
100%. I actually have firsthand experience with this because in that shared unit I was talking about, spoiler alert, the other tenants did eventually end up being evicted. But it was like like an 8-month long thing. Like it was, and they were like thousands and thousands of dollars behind on rent. They hadn't paid rent and like almost, I don't know the
Right.
exact numbers because it wasn't my situation. I wasn't involved in it. But they were like months and months and months behind on rent, thousands of dollars. They had destroyed our landlord's downstairs unit, which is what I live in now.
But like
But
it's crazy how people can get away with those things, I guess.
right. And it's kind of a deterrent for potential landlords because no one wants to be a landlord and have horrible clients or
Right.
tenants.
Clients, tenants, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the one things, because I've always thought about, eventually buying rental properties. But seeing the struggle of evicting these tenants who were absolutely horrible tenants, who didn't pay their rent, who didn't do anything that they were supposed
Right.
to in the lease. They had to go to court. They had to go to multiple court days. They had to have proof. They had to have all these things. And even then, the court still tried to mediate a solution in which they could stay in the house,
Oh my gosh.
before that they could be evicted. They had to have like a landlord and the tenants, and they had to have like a mediator in a room, all sit down and talk about it and say, hey, how can we fix this, as if they were two like
Like
kindergartner kids.
spouses. Oh my gosh. I think that that's why you really have to do your homework into who is going into your home. Like,
Exactly.
really check them out.
And then on the flip side, same thing, as a tenant, you have to know whose home you're moving into,
Yes.
because
Yes,
any of
that's
these
very true.
situations could happen flip flop. So that's kind of why it's super important to not just rush into signing a lease, whether you're a tenant or a landlord.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it's so hard to find a good rental these days. I don't know what it's like in your area, but in Guelph, it is really hard to find a good rental for a decent price and a decent house with a decent landlord,
Mhm.
because there are so many people who are just absolute bad tenants,
Bad tenants. That's
as
the best word.
nicely.
I was like
Yeah.
trying to filter myself. Yes, and I think there comes a certain level of mistrust where we've all experienced that in different areas of our life. But then you're like, okay, I'm going to be that much more guarded the next time that someone wants to rent this house, or that I'm going to rent somewhere. I'm going to do my research, and then that could cause you to, you know, be the tenant that's overlooked because you asked too many questions, and they're like, well, we just want someone to move in tomorrow, and you're like, I don't really know you. But that's part of it. Has to feel right too. You have to trust your gut.
Right. It's similar with like a job interview. If you walk in and someone's like, okay, you can start like right now, to me, that's a red flag, because it's like, well, why are you so,
Yeah, and you're like, give me a little bit of time.
yeah, or like, ask me a couple questions first, or like,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Do you are like, yeah, are you just hiring anyone, or are you looking for someone?
right. I'm pretty lucky right now. I'm still renting and I have a pretty great landlord. It is still that landlord who went to court and evicted the other people, but she's good. She's great. And then one final thing I want to talk about before we get into some landlord rights and whatnot
Mhm.
is pets, because I know that there is a big gray area with pets. People are like, you can't have pets in certain places, and some people are like, well, no, you can't discriminate against people if they have pets, blah, 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 blah.
Humans, we
Yeah,
are the
and
worst.
literally the worst. But there's a big like unsureness about pets
Right.
and rentals and landlords and tenants and blah 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 blah. And I wish that there was a black and white answer where I could tell you, yes, people can say no to pets, or no, people can't say no to pets. But
Isn't
like
it
most things, it's a gray area.
right? And isn't that personal preference? Like if I put my rental out there and I say no pets, and someone comes and they have a pet, I can say no.
Yes and no.
Hmm.
Um,
What do you
landlord,
mean?
it's let me explain a little bit.
Okay.
So landlords can rent to whoever they want. It's their decision to choose who they rent for, but they can't discriminate on things like race,
Right,
sexuality, gender, and
right.
stuff like that. Um, they can't kick you out if you have a pet and it's not in the lease that you can't have a pet. Does that make sense? So
Right.
let's say I
What if
sign a
it's
lease. There's nothing to do with pets. I bring a pet in, and then the landlord decides, no, you can't have a pet. There's
right?
nothing that they can do.
You can't change the rules in the middle of the game, but what if it says I don't allow pets, and you're like, yeah, cool, I don't have pets, and then you come home from the county fair with a snake. Now what?
So
Can you have that snake?
if it's in the lease saying no pets and you've signed, then you can't bring a pet.
Okay, that
How,
makes sense.
however, it's a gray area on whether or not landlords can discriminate against people with pets, because technically there is no law and there's nothing that says anywhere that they can't say no to pets.
Wow.
Um,
We're like a whole new
what?
I guess I guess it's like people with kids, right? Like you couldn't be like, no, no kids.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So like if I couldn't seek any help or take my landlord to court or anything like that if I had pets. I feel like I've just confused myself here now because this is such a confusing situation.
So
However,
yeah,
but
be open
like,
with your landlord too, right? I think that's a good part.
exactly. It's just like
Don't
something you want to avoid.
that saying where it's like it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission doesn't apply to this one. Don't bring home a dog and then be like, oh, by the way, haha, hope it's okay, and then they're like, no, and then yeah,
Right. But there are also situations in which they can't just get you out of there. Like in condos, condos are a little bit different because it's a shared space. So if they can definitely say no to dogs, no to pets, no nothing.
right.
And then if, the dog is, sorry, I'm using dogs because dogs are the best pets, obviously.
Obviously.
If there's any sort
I'm
of
not
pet
angry.
that is causing any sort of, like making it hard for other people to live there, if you don't clean up after the pet, like there's all these situations in which landlords then can take legal action if your pet is causing an actual disturbance. But if there's nothing in the lease and you have a pet, technically, yes, you're fine. But again, you want to build that relationship with the landlord. You don't want to start off
Yeah,
on
you don't want to burn bridges.
exactly. So my professional advice is be open. Tell them you have a pet.
Yes, that makes sense. That
Most
makes the most
most
sense.
landlords are chill with it, unless it's like a high end, they don't want any damage, but um, they can definitely put something in the lease or make an agreement with you, like any damage caused by your pet, you have to pay for things
Yeah,
like
which
that.
makes sense.
And that just protects everyone, and then you won't have any situations in which you're going to court.
Okay, dig it. Cool.
So that's my very confusing, not really black and white answer to whether or not you can have pets.
I like it. Tell me about landlord rights.
Landlord rights. So I am a big fan of being a
The
landlord.
landlord.
Yeah. As a real estate agent, I'm always encouraging people to buy rental properties because you're sitting on your butt, but you're making money each month.
Depending on the tenant, though, right? Like, I think that's a big. It comes with a big risk. Big
Oh,
risk, big
100%.
reward.
Yeah, I don't want to say that, it's the easiest thing in the world because, firsthand experience, I've watched my roommates have to go to court to talk about how terrible these tenants are. But that being said, if you are able to, get a rental and get quality tenants, there are so many plus sides. You can
Totally.
basically live for free. Um, I think a great way to enter the real estate market is if you're young and you have some money, you buy a rental, you live in it, you rent out extra space to other people, your mortgage is covered, you're living for free.
Yeah, or a portion of it at least, and then they're paying they're putting equity into your asset. But I'm
Exactly.
also pro the side where people want to go from renter to owner, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, pay your own. Put equity into an asset that is yours.
Yes, but also like people who are well off and set and have that money and they just want to make an extra income and they already own their house, their
Oh
mortgage is
yeah,
paid
it's like
paid
a
off.
good passive income.
It is 100%. But like you said, it comes with those risks, all those horrible things we've talked about.
Yeah,
Um,
those are your risks.
exactly. But like anyone can be a landlord, really, and anyone can be a tenant. So it's you have to find that fine line. But the good part about being a landlord is, there are a lot of realtors who will do rentals, and they will vet those tenants and they will make sure you have quality tenants. And there are realtors who will
Oh.
even manage the rental. So you literally just put up your money and
Like property management.
yeah, and there's property management companies as well. That's usually for bigger condos or big
Okay,
apartment buildings. But there are
interesting.
definitely landowners who have multiple rental units and they have someone else take care of everything and they just sit there, look pretty, and make money.
So you as a realtor could manage a property without any like other qualifications. If you could just say, "Yep, I'll manage your house," and then do up a contract.
Um, yes, like I couldn't manage a entire like condo or something like that. Like those
Right.
are properties. But if I have a client who would like to rent out, but they don't want to do anything, they just want to give me the money, then yeah, 100%.
Okay.
be super easy. I would just be like the middle person there.
Yes, that makes sense.
But normally renting is just like, the land or the agent gets paid half a month's rent, so it's not really worth it. Then they would then have to come up with another agreement, an
Mhm.
ongoing payment for them to manage the company
Yeah, like a
or the
percentage of
rental.
it. Yeah,
If that makes sense.
that makes sense.
Yeah, but risks. You have to know all of the rights, and there's a big document. There's the tenant and landlord board, tenants right boards. There's all these documents you have to know. You have to know everyone's rights. You have to keep up with your unit, whether it's through you or through a property management. But leases very rarely just say, okay, this is your house now, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah,
Usually landlords do grass, or they pay utilities, or whatever it
yeah,
may be.
maintenance.
There's definitely a little bit of upkeep there, but I think it's a great option.
Yeah, yeah, I would
And I
agree.
would be happy to talk to anyone who may be interested in that
I like how,
further. A
yes,
little self promotion, if you
I like
will.
it. Absolutely.
All
Well, there's
right. Any questions?
no. I'm liking all the information you're giving me. Do you have any stories to share?
Yeah, you bet I do. That's kind of what I'm
All right, let's hit
getting to
on the high notes, the
next.
stories.
Yes. So I want to get into a little bit more detail about the co-tenants that I had mentioned previously in this episode
Mhm.
that, spoiler alert, eventually were evicted. So I lived with them. I lived in the upstairs unit with two other people. Is it the Hands?
No, I think you did two spoiler alerts that they were evicted, but I'll have to listen back and see.
No,
So,
I 100% did.
okay,
I definitely
good.
did.
Spoiler alert. It's a spoiled alert. They were evicted.
I just want to tag my spoilers, okay?
I
I'm
love it. All
sorry.
right. So they were.
I lived upstairs with two roommates who were family members. Shout out to Emily and Chris.
Yes.
And then they lived downstairs, and it was a full family. It was a young couple and their two kids. And we moved into the upstairs unit. We had our separate lease. They had the bottom lease. They had their own separate lease for the downstairs, and we shared laundry, backyard, driveway, just like common areas, stuff like that. And it started off great. Their kids cried a lot, and it was fine, but we could barely hear them.
Their
And we met
kids.
them. Kids?
Their kids cried.
Yeah, like one of them was like almost like a newborn baby, like less than a year old, and one of them was like 8 or 9.
Oh damn.
They did a lot of devil's lettuce outside, and it came in my room a lot. Not a big deal. Like, I'm a university student. Do I care? No.
Yeah. Sorry.
But I start taking a shot every time I hear that noise.
Figure that out.
But things started to very quickly sour, if you will.
Oh, it was spoiled.
It was, oh my gosh. Let me take a sip of my coffee before I get into the tofu.
So a family of 4 is living below you.
One night, Emily, Chris, and I we're all in university, mind you. It's just the three of us. We're very chill people. We were having a couple drinks sitting at our dining room table, which was above their kitchen, not above their bedroom or anything like that. Okay. And we probably finished by like 11:30, like started at like 7. We were literally playing card games. We had music playing, but like at a respect, like we know they had kids. We're all pretty respectful.
Yeah, you're aware that you have basement dwellers. Yeah.
Yes. And we thought we were very quiet. There was nothing that really happened. And then we went to bed, perfectly normal. Next morning, I wake up at 6:30 to the most aggressive banging on it would have been my floor from downstairs. And I'm not gonna say a name. Andy, we'll call him, had grabbed a broom and was just reefing on the floor at 7 a.m. trying to wake us up because we were so loud the night before, apparently. And this
but also damaging, like...
Yeah. And when we eventually came down here, like a year later, there was holes all over the ceiling, like dents. You could tell it was from a broom. And then another thing he did was grabbed a knife and walked to all of the vents and just grated it as loud as he could. And we have videos. I don't have the video, but maybe I'll post a little snippet of it on our Instagram or something, of him. It lasted for hours, and it was so aggressively loud, and his kids were crying. And we were just like sitting there at like 7 a.m. like, what is going on? And that's when everything went sour. Everything, it got spoiled, if you will. And it just continued on for months.
That is
They would
freaky.
just, yeah, they would randomly wake us up at like 7 a.m. by just being as loud as they possibly could. My bedroom was right by our backyard. Like my window was right on the backyard where they had a old musty couch that they sat on and got high all the time.
Nice.
And I could just listen to those conversations when my window was open. But I remember one morning I woke up and we had literally done nothing. Like we never talked to them. As soon as that happened, we cut off all contact. We only went and did laundry when we knew they weren't home. Like we just avoided them at all costs because like we were like, what is going on? We thought they were like fairly normal people.
That's also this is how the story starts where they murder you.
Literally, and it got so much worse. I remember like when I was laying in bed, it was like 8 a.m. I was just waking up for school or something, and I was like still on my phone, and all of a sudden, I don't know what he realized or what happened or whatever, but I could hear Andy, I almost said his name again, in our driveway screaming at us through the window, like threatening us, saying he was going to get us. It was a lot of swear words. He was going to, he said, and I quote, "I'm going to effing get you kids," and just screamed at like that for like 20 minutes. And I did not go to class because I didn't want to leave my house because I knew he was in the driveway.
You sure he wasn't talking about his own kids?
No, like he was like using our names. Yeah, it was absolutely wild. And then one time we used to have my cousin, who was like 2, come over all the time and play, and they used to leave their drug paraphernalia right in our driveway, just like on the floor or in our backyard, everywhere.
Nice.
Which wasn't a big deal, but when we had kids coming and they had kids and they had their kids' friends over, so we had moved one of their drug paraphernalia so that it wasn't in plain view of all the kids that came into our house pretty
But you didn't take
regularly.
it.
No, we didn't take it. They still had it. It wasn't broken. It was just moved. And
Mistakey.
Emily and Chris were napping at the time, and I was in the kitchen cooking. And all of a sudden, we had like a side door that was like right beside their entrance door, and all of a sudden, the door was just like rattling, like someone was banging on it aggressively and just screaming at us. And I hadn't moved it, so I didn't know what was going on. And I wasn't wearing a shirt or anything, so I didn't want to open the door and just be like,
and get stabbed half naked, right?
Yeah. So I went to my bedroom to get a shirt on to open the door, and then it was so loud it woken Emily and Chris up. And Chris is like, "I'll deal with this. Like, don't touch that door," because like he was obviously very aggressive, and I'm a child. So Chris opened the door, and this man started just screaming, trying to push his way into our house and trying to ask Chris to fight him, like physically fight him, and tried to break into our home. And this was like a Tuesday afternoon at like 2 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just a wild time in my life that I just was not ready for.
I would be uncomfortable. Like you're fearful of like sleeping or going outside. Like
Yeah. And then it still took them like almost a whole other year to get evicted after all these things. And Chris had to go to court and like testify that all these things happened. And then I remember one more thing. I remember we had to do laundry right before, like they had already been told that they were getting evicted. So like they were worse. They didn't care. They were like painting, or they were coloring all over the walls down here, like just making an absolute mess. And we were like terrified of them and like didn't want to like interact with them. But we still needed to do laundry, and the laundry was downstairs right by their apartment. And normally we would just wait until their car was out of the driveway to do it.
yes.
But they had gotten home and we had laundry in the washer, and we were afraid they were going to like dump stuff on it or something. So we went down to get it, and they were down there. We could hear that they were down there, and we were just afraid they were going to come out. So Chris went down to get it, and I stood at the top of the stairs videotaping, just in case anything happened. And the second we opened our door and walked down, they opened their door and walked out. And it was just the most dramatic thing. And I don't even remember what was said, but it was just like...
That is so spooky. Oh my goodness.
And that was a year of my life living with these people.
No, no. That is, so there you go. Big risk, big reward. Big reward, big risk.
Yeah. And another spoiler alert, that man is now in jail. So
Really?
mhm.
Didn't see that coming. How
Didn't
do
see
you
it
know?
coming at all. Uh, undisclosed, I will say how I know that information.
Keeping
I
up
won't disclose that.
with the tenants.
Yes. Also, okay, I know that we are almost at our time limit, but one more thing about, I want to say it was like 4 months after they had moved out. Um, my roommates had bought a brand new car, and I park near the house and they park kind of near the street and near the long driveway. And one night they came out and there was cat litter all over their car. Like someone had dumped cat litter all over, like used dirty poop, pee, cat litter all over their car. Um,
Ew.
and the downstairs tenants used to have two cats, and there was cat litter all over the apartment when we got possession of it. So we have no proof that it was them, but we can only assume that still, like 4 months later, because who else would pour cat litter on a car that they just got?
What? That is so. People are wild.
And like these are like late 20s, like adults with kids.
And like with their 9-year-old, like look what she's seeing, and maybe it was instructed. Yep, you can draw on the walls. Like we're not going to be here long. Like we need to do better.
And it was just
That's
really sad to see like what those kids were going through. And
yeah.
then I'm pretty sure she was also pregnant when they were evicted, because they left a calendar down here. They left a bunch of stuff. They had hockey cards tacked to the wall where there was holes to cover up the holes. It was really funny. Not funny, but um, they left a calendar down here for that year, and there was a bunch of like appointments about babies and
Appointments.
stuff. So yeah, but they were still doing the ganja as well. So
Good,
yeah.
good, good. Wow, you've lived it.
I have lived it, and that is why I would be scared to be a landlord, but also
That's why you're
I
also
probably
an
would.
amazing resource for people to go to when they're in these situations because you know the rules.
100%. And if anyone like has any questions, if you're signing a lease, I will absolutely take a look at the lease for free and just make sure you're not being scammed or whatever. There are a lot of people out there that don't have your best interests in mind, so always have your best interests in mind.
Yeah, have your
There's
circle.
resources out there, exactly.
Hmm.
Talk to your family, talk to your friends, get a second opinion on things.
Yeah,
Not that hard.
absolutely. Awesome. Episode 17. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, Dakota, for your
And
expertise.
thank you for listening. Thank you for coming.
Stay fit and have fun.
Stay fit and have fun. Yep, love that. Okay, goodbye, guys.
Okay, love you.